Hello, this video is going to be about predicate adjectives and predicate nominatives and subject-verb agreement. This will be the last summer video 6. Let's go ahead and talk about predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives. So remember how we talked in the previous video about action verbs. Action verbs often, or sometimes, not always, have direct objects, and how the main parts of the sentence are subject, predicate, direct object, indirect object, and now we're talking about predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives. So while action verbs have direct objects, I gave her a ride. We would diagram that like this. There are no prepositional phrases. That's what we look for first. We would say gave is an action verb. It's a simple predicate. I is a simple subject. It's a pronoun. And then we have an action verb, so we're always going to see if we have a direct object. Gave what? Ride. And remember, the direct object will always be a noun or a pronoun. How is ride a noun? Ride a thing? Well, in this sentence, it is. It's a thing. It's not a thing you can touch, but a ride, right? Ride can also be an action verb, but in this case, it is a noun. Gave what? Ride. It is the direct object, and it is a noun. And then anytime you have a direct object, you're going to find out if you have an indirect object by saying to or for whom. Gave ride to or for whom? Her. And then we're going to diagram that just like a prepositional phrase without the preposition. And that's an indirect object, and that's a pronoun. And now we're going to add any modifiers. We have a, which is an adjective. It's always an adjective. So now we have I gave her a ride. And that is how we diagram that sentence. So for action verbs, we're looking for direct objects. Now, there is another type of verb called, remember, a linking verb. And linking verbs link a word in link the subject to a word in the predicate that describes or renames that subject. And that word in the predicate that describes or renames the subject is the predicate adjective or predicate nominative. So let's first look at linking verbs very quickly. Linking verbs are the forms of be. When they are used as the main verb, will always be linking verbs. So we have am, is, are, was, were, be, being, and been. So those are, when they are the main verb, are always linking verbs. Now remember, some of them can be helping verbs. I can say, I am running. Well, am is not the main verb there. It's a helping verb. It's helping out the action verb. But when they're the main verb, when they're the only verb or the main verb, they're going to be linking verbs. So let's look at this sentence. I am happy. There's a form of be. Anytime a form of be is the main verb, it is a linking verb. Am is a linking verb. It's linking I, the subject I, to a word in the predicate that describes or renames the subject. In this case, it describes the subject, and a describing word is an adjective. So this is what's called a predicate adjective. The part of speech is adjective. The part of the sentence is predicate adjective. And we're going to look at how to diagram that in just a minute. But let me show you a predicate nominative. Nominative, nominate means to name, right? Nominative is a name. So I am the teacher. Again, we have the linking verb am. It's linking it's linking the subject I to a word in the predicate that this time renames the subject. So it's a predicate nominative. The part of speech is a noun, right? But it's a predicate nominative. It renames the subject. And how we can be sure if it's a predicate nominative that it renames or replaces it, you can turn it around. The teacher is I. So I am the teacher, right? You can switch it around. So the reason you need to know predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives, particularly predicate nominatives, is when we get to pronoun usage, we will learn that if there is a pronoun that is a predicate nominative, you need a subject pronoun versus an object pronoun. So I versus me, and we'll get into all of that later, but just know there is a reason that you're learning this. So let's talk, before we diagram predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives, just a little bit about other linking verbs besides the forms of be. So am is, are, was, were, be, being, been. Those are always, when they're the main verb, they'll always be linking verbs. There are a few other words that can be linking verbs too, like seem. He seems sad. He seems sad. If you look at that, you might think, oh, well, seems is an action verb. No, seems is actually a linking verb there, and there's one really easy way to tell. That is, if you can replace it with one of these forms of be, and it doesn't really change the meaning of the sentence, then it's probably a linking verb. So could we replace that with is? He is sad? Yes. So seems here is linking the subject he to a word in the predicate that describes the subject. So sad goes back and describes he, so sad is a predicate adjective there. He seems sad, he is sad, right? Another common linking verb is looks. Like I could say, I look at the sky, and look is an action verb, right? But what if I say, I look tired? I look tired. I look tired. I'm not actually looking at something with my eyes, am I? Look is connecting tired. That goes back and describes I. Tired is a predicate adjective. What is the test for that? What is the test to see if we think it's a linking verb? Can we replace it with one of the forms of be? I am tired. Yes, we can. And it means pretty close to the same thing. Another one is feels. And this one is going to be really important later as we talk about adverbs and how to choose the correct adverb to use. Feels. He feels sad. Feels there is actually a linking verb. We can replace it with he is. He is sad. He feels sad. He's not actually feeling something with his hand. So feels is a linking verb there. He feels sad. Look, feels, seems. Those are very common linking verbs. So the forms of be, and then words like seems, looks, and feels, that can be replaced with forms of be without changing the meaning of the sentence. So let's look at how to diagram some of these sentences. And there is a handout on this that will go on Google Classroom. Students from last year, you already have this. It's called Predicate Adjectives and Predicate Nominatives. But new students will need to print this and put it in the grammar notes section of your binder. We will actually fill in some of the diagrams on this. So on your handout, there are some sentences. The students were happy about the trip. My brother is a very tall boy. The child feels sad about his broken toy. We'll actually diagram those in this video, so you might want to go ahead and print out this handout, Predicate Adjectives and Predicate Nominatives, and keep it out with you, and you could go ahead and diagram these sentences on your handout so that you'll have that information on the handout. So, the first sentence is, the students were happy about the field trip. About the field trip. Okay, the students were happy about the field trip. So, anytime you are diagramming, your first step, and we'll just do this one together, and then the next one we'll pause the video. Let's see. So the first step is to put the prepositional phrases in parentheses. About is a common preposition. So about what? About trip. About the field trip is a prepositional phrase. So now we can go ahead and draw our baseline. And our verb is were. Our simple predicate is were. It is a linking verb, so we're going to put LV above it for the part of speech. The part of speech is really verb, but I have you just specify the type of verb. And then our simple subject is students, and that is a noun. Now, remember how with action verbs, we say we might have a direct object? Well, with linking verbs, you know there's going to be something else on the baseline because the whole purpose of a linking verb is to connect the subject to a word in the predicate that describes or renames the subject. So if we have a linking verb, you know you're going to have a predicate adjective or predicate nominative, so you know there will always be something else on the baseline if you have a linking verb. And you're going to just draw a little arrow, sort of, not an arrow, sorry, a line, sort of angling back toward the subject, because whatever it is that's going to go over here, a predicate adjective or a predicate nominative, it's describing or renaming the subject, right? So a little line slanting back, and then you're going to put your predicate adjective or predicate nominative, and it's happy, right? Were is connecting students to happy. Is happy a predicate adjective or a predicate nominative? How do we know? Well, predicate adjective is going to be an adjective. It describes students. Predicate nominative is going to be a noun or a pronoun because it can replace the subject. So in this case, it is an adjective, so it's a predicate adjective. We're going to put PA. Now we can go in and fill in our modifiers. The students, the is an adjective. We're happy, and happy is a predicate adjective, and then we have about the field trip. And remember, prepositional phrases work, the words of a prepositional phrase work together to modify something, and in this case, it's modifying happy, right? They were happy about the field trip, so we're going to put about, so preposition, and then field trip, and it doesn't really matter, but this is sort of like a compound object of the preposition. You might choose to put field trip. Really, this is a compound object of the preposition. It's a noun. But I also would not say that it's wrong to just put trip and put field down here as an adjective. What kind of trip? Field trip. Sometimes the line is a little gray there between what is a compound word and what is just a noun and its adjective. But I'm going to call field trip a compound object of the preposition. All right, so we have the students were happy about, and then we need the there, which is an adjective. The students were happy about the field trip. So that is how you diagram a predicate adjective. Now on this handout, oh yeah, there is one right there. Okay, good. I was going to say there aren't any predicate nominatives, but I see one. All right, so now we have my brother is a very tall boy. Let's look at this one. My brother is a very tall boy. Okay, no prepositional phrases here, so we can go ahead and start with our baseline, and our verb is, and it is a linking verb, and it is the simple predicate. And brother is the simple subject, and it is a noun. And anytime we have a linking verb, you know we're going to have a predicate adjective or predicate nominative, so I can go ahead and draw that line slanting back toward the subject. And now we have to ask ourselves, do we have a predicate adjective or predicate nominative? Now don't be confused and see tall and think, oh, it's a predicate adjective. No, now if it said my brother is very tall, it would be, but what is tall actually modifying here? It's modifying boy. So boy is the predicate nominative. It is a noun. My brother's a very tall boy. Boy is going back and renaming or taking the place of brother. My brother is a very tall boy. So it's a predicate nominative. Now we can add all of our modifiers. We have my, remember that we talked about how that's a possessive pronoun used as an adjective, but it goes on the adjective line, so we're gonna call it an adjective. My brother is, so a boy, so a modifies boy, a boy. Tall modifies boy. What kind of boy? Tall boy. And then very is an adverb modifying tall. Tall to what extent or how tall? Very tall. All right, so my brother is a very tall boy. That is how we would diagram that sentence. Now I am going to have you diagram this sentence. The child feels sad. You know what? I want to leave out the prepositional phrase here. We're just going to simplify the diagramming on this one, so you can just mark out if you have that handout about his broken toy. We're just going to simplify that and have it say the child feels sad. So no prepositional phrases, so we're going to put our linking verb, feels, simple predicate, P for simple predicate. It's the linking verb. And then we have the simple subject as child, and it is a noun. The subject of the sentence is always a noun or pronoun. So you're probably starting to see here what's the difference between a part of the sentence and a part of speech. Every word will be a part of speech. The words on the baseline are our main parts of the sentence. Subject will always be a noun or a pronoun. Verb will always be a linking verb or action verb with its helping verb if it has a helping verb, and then we'll have our complement, which will be a direct or indirect, a direct object. Indirect object actually goes down under the verb. Direct object, or a predicate nominative or predicate adjective. Okay, so we have child, feels, and if we have a linking verb, we know we're going to have a predicate adjective or predicate nominative, because that is the point of a linking verb. So feels sad. So sad is a predicate adjective. It's an adjective. It can't be a predicate nominative unless it's a noun or a pronoun, unless it's a person, place, or thing. So in this case, it's an adjective. It goes back and modifies child, describes child. So child feels sad. Now, how did I know feels is a linking verb there? Because I can replace it with a form of be. The child is sad. So then we have the is an adjective. And then we have, that's our only modifier. So that is that sentence. And I just realized that I said that you were going to pause it and do that one together. But that's okay if I didn't remind you to do that. So that's okay if you just did it along with the video or watched it. Okay, so now the last thing that I want to review with you for the summer videos is subject-verb agreement. And I have this handout that I'm going to put on Google Classroom, and I actually want all of you to print it, even returning students, because I think returning students, I think your information about subject-verb agreement is actually on a worksheet that is in your grammar work section, and maybe harder to find that. You might not even still have it. So let's go ahead and print this, making subjects and verbs agree, and you can put it in the grammar notes section of your binder so you will have it to refer to. Okay, so subject-verb agreement. A subject, when we our writing a sentence or speaking, our verb has to agree with our subject in number. So the child runs. Our subject is child, and our verb, or our simple predicate, is runs. Child runs. Child is singular. Singular means one, right? So a singular noun is a one noun. Child is singular. Children is plural, right? So we have a singular noun. So if we have a singular subject, then we need a singular verb. Now here's where it gets a little bit confusing, because with verbs, singular verbs end in S and plural verbs do not end in S. So it's the opposite of nouns, right? So while most of the time singular nouns do not end in S and plural nouns do, although of course there are nouns like children that are plural, more than one, that do not end in S. But for verbs, it's the opposite. So singular verbs end in S while plural verbs do not. So we need a singular subject. In this case, it does not end in S. Singular subject does not end in S, and a singular verb which does, right? So the child runs is what we would say. And that's pretty easy for you. I don't think you would say the child run. Anyway, the child runs, the children, because children is plural, right? We need a plural verb, so one that does not end in S. Children run. So that is pretty easy. But there are some tricky situations. One tricky situation mentioned on your handout is when you have a compound subject joined by and. So she, just look at the sentence on here. She and her friends are at the fair. So when you have a compound subject joined by and, you use a plural verb. So it's not she and her friends is at the fair. You need a plural verb, a verb that does not end in S. She and her friends are at the fair. Compound subject joined by and takes a plural verb, a verb that does not end in S. Now, when you have a compound subject joined by or, this says when two or more singular nouns or pronouns are connected by or, then you use a singular verb. That's because they're both singular. But really the rule, actually, to simplify that a little bit, is just to know that when you have a compound subject joined by or, the verb agrees with the closer subject, because that would really apply to either of these. The book or the pen is in the drawer. You can just look at pen. Pen is. Pen is. We don't say pen are. Pen is. So when the compound subject is joined by or, the verb agrees with the closer subject. Because sometimes you've got like a singular, one of your subjects is singular and one is plural. Like in this, boy is singular, friends is plural, but you're going to look at the closer subject to the verb. So you could ignore boy and just look at friends. Friends run. Friends run. So the boy or his friends run. So compound subject joined by or, the verb agrees with the closer subject. Look at whatever verb is closer. Look, whatever subject is closer to the verb. Okay. Doesn't. Doesn't is a contraction of does not. It should be used only with a singular subject. Don't is a contraction of do not and should be used only with a plural subject. The exception to this rule appears in the case of the first person and second person pronouns I and you. With these pronouns, the contraction don't should be used. So we say he, which is singular, he doesn't. So be aware just that this is a contraction and that what we're really saying is does not, right? So he is singular, so we need a singular verb that ends in S. He does. We is plural, right? So we need a plural subject that does not, a plural verb that does not end in S. We do. He does, we do. We do, we don't. So just to be aware of what that contraction means. Doesn't is a contraction for does not. Don't is a contraction for do not. So you have to figure out, would you either use does or do when you're dealing with contractions. Don't be misled by a phrase that comes between the subject and verb. The verb agrees with the subject, not with a noun or pronoun in the phrase. One of the boxes is open. This is why it is very important to remember for prepositional phrases to put the prepositional phrase in parentheses. So you know then, oh, it doesn't matter that it's boxes. No, we wouldn't say boxes is, but boxes is not the subject. That's a prepositional phrase. It doesn't matter what that says. We're going to look at the subject. One is. One is open. We wouldn't say one are open, so we wouldn't say one of the boxes are open because boxes is not the subject. So that illustrates right there why it's very important to understand prepositions and prepositional phrases, because this is not the subject. One is the subject. So the verb has to agree with the subject. Doesn't matter what's between the subject and the verb has to agree with the subject. One is. One of the boxes is open. One is open. All right, and then we have like this one. The team captain as well as his players is anxious. Subject here is captain. Captain is. Yes, players is right there, but players is not the subject. The subject is captain. The book, including all the chapters in the first section, is boring. Book is. The woman with all the dogs walks down my street. Dogs is not the subject. With all the dogs there is a prepositional phrase. So we say woman walks. Woman walks. And take the time. You can take the time to go back over this and just refer to this as you're doing your editing exercises. The words each one, either, neither, everyone, everybody, anybody, anyone, nobody, somebody, someone, and no one are singular. These are all indefinite pronouns, and they can be a little bit confusing, but these are all singular and require a singular verb. Each of these hot dogs is juicy. Again, of these hot dogs is a prepositional phrase. Doesn't matter. We're not going to say each of these hot dogs are because dogs is not the subject. Each is the subject. Each is juicy. Each is singular because the best way I can describe this is when you're talking about each, you're talking about this one and this one and this one and this one separate, right? They're each separate, talking about them separately, so they're singular. Each of these hot dogs is juicy. And then everybody, again, is singular. Everybody knows Mr. Jones. Either is singular. Either is correct. So just know that these are singular and be aware, especially with each. Each can get really tricky because it's often followed by a prepositional phrase. So just know that if it's followed by a prepositional phrase, each is the subject. I want to look at each for a minute. We can say each of the boys is happy. That's because each is the subject. Of the boys is a prepositional phrase. Each is happy, right? But look at this sentence. Each, and it doesn't change the verb in this case, but each boy is happy. What's the subject there? Each is not the subject there. Boy is the subject. Each is a modifier for boy. Right? Up here, boys is not the subject because it's in a prepositional phrase. Okay. And then I don't want you to worry too much about number 7 and 8. You might read over that. Nouns such as civics, mathematics, dollars, news, even though they end in S, require singular verbs. We don't say the news are on at 6. We say the news is on at 6. The word dollars, it says, is a special case. When talking about an amount of money, it requires a singular verb. But when referring to the dollars themselves as things, it's a plural verb. You say $5 is a lot of money, right? We're talking about $5 as a whole. But here, dollars are often used. Here you're talking about the actual dollars, the cash. Dollars are. Don't worry too much about that. Just read over it. Nouns such as scissors, tweezers, trousers, and shears require plural verbs. There are 2 parts to these things. All right, so that handout will help you as you're doing your editing exercises. You can refer back to them. Probably the most important points in that is that with the most important points are that you need to join, when you have a compound subject joined by and, it takes a plural verb. When you have a compound subject joined by or, the verb agrees with the closer subject. be aware of prepositional phrases, and don't get confused and think that the subject is within the prepositional phrase. So just always be aware of what your subject is. And then one other thing that I don't, oh yeah, here it is. I didn't even see that page. One other thing is when there's a sentence with there, like in this sentence, we have there are many questions. In sentences beginning with there is or there are, the subject follows the verb. Since there is not the subject, the verb agrees with what follows. So see how there are many questions? What is the subject of the sentence? There is actually an adverb. There is not going to be the subject. Questions is the subject. Just because it's at the end doesn't mean it can't be the subject. Questions are. There are many questions. You wouldn't say there is many questions. There is a question. There are many questions. There will never be the subject. Questions is the subject there. Same thing like when you have a question. Why is the answer 10? Why is the answer 10? So, or why is that the answer? Why are those the answers? So just be careful with questions. And then this talks a little bit about collective nouns, how like team is singular, so you say the team runs. And that will do on those subject-verb agreement rules. Again, the most important ones are the compound subjects joined by and. Use a plural verb, compound subjects joined by or. The verb agrees with the closer subject, and don't get confused about what the subject is. Watch for those prepositional phrases. So you're going to have some editing, on your editing exercise, you already have had some subject-verb agreement errors to correct. And I want you to always pay attention to the verb on these editing exercises. If you're not sure what the error is, always look and see if there's an error with the verb, because verb errors are very common. So on your editing exercise, you have so far two types of verb errors. You have principal part errors, right? So always make sure that they're using the right principal parts of the verb. And the other type of verb error is subject-verb agreement. So always make sure that your verb agrees with, gonna run out of the room there, agrees with your subject. Okay, so that is the last summer video, and you will have, that makes a total of 6 videos, and you will have 6 editing exercises as well. Thank you very much.